Is MRI the appropriate test to predict ventricular arrhythmia?
MRI is a good test to predict arrhythmias, but there are other tests who are also good at that. Echocardiography can do a little bit of that. Nuclear imaging can possibly also do a little bit of that. I would say that none of the imaging tests is 100% conclusive. But what the imaging tests do is that they can clearly define the scar from where ventricular arrhythmias can start, but it also defines this border zone, which was already defined by Professor Zipes in the 1980s. So yes, all of these techniques have value in that, but none of the techniques is so accurate that it predicts 100% or excludes 100%.
So it is one of the main tests to identify sudden death?
Yes, if you want to use imaging to predict sudden death, then you can use one of those tests, and specifically MRI has a very high resolution. So eventually I think it could be useful, or at least it could assist in the prediction of sudden death.
What are the steps? MRI, ECG, echo?
Well, I think what is always important, you have an ECG, so you look at the electrical signals, and then you do an echocardiogram where you assess the routine parameters such as LV function. We can do that now in more advanced manner where we assess the global strain, which is a more advanced LV function assessment than just ejection fraction. And then MRI adds this specific thing that it can so nicely, with so high resolution, much higher than the other techniques, detect actually the scar tissue. I should say that nuclear imaging has a tracer which is called MIBG, where you can also assess the innervation of the heart. That's another thing that's being tested at the moment and could be useful also in prediction of sudden death. Because if the areas are still alive but denervated, which is another characteristic of this border zone, it may turn out that these are also very predictive of sudden death. There are already several studies that have hinted to this, also with positron emission tomography. So I think all these imaging techniques will probably play a role on top of ECG and routine echocardiography.